Welcome to Pixel Pizza,
Did she say pizza?
your ultimate source for chiptunes, video game talk, and pepperoni. Delivered to you from Los Angeles and into the digital cyberspace of the 2020s.
Pizza power!
That's right, one super giant pizza.
I want a large, thick crust with double cheese, ham, pepperoni. Hey, where's my pizza? Pizza time. Welcome, my friends. Welcome to the first episode of Pixel Pizza. My name is Jared, aka DJ Jettset, aka the Pixel Pizza Professional, and we are returning to the airwaves after 7 long years. So you are probably new to this, you are probably wondering what I mean by that, and I would love to regale you with a little bit of a story here before we launch into our very first episode of the 2020s. And so this is the story, and to introduce myself a little bit, give you some backdrop, I have always been super passionate about video games. I grew up from the age of 3 or 4 playing games, and it's always been something special to me as an art form. I've always seen it as this incredible merge of creators bringing forth something they could not together as a piece of art. And so I've always loved games, and when I reached college, at Emerson College in Boston, I was given the opportunity to host my own radio show for the college's well-regarded underground radio station, WECB. Check them out. They're still on the airwaves today, kicking it. And I figured, why not take what I love, video games, and bring it to the radio space, something that wasn't really being done at the time, 2012 to 2015, which is when we did this. And I did it, and what I did was every week I would interview a person from around the video game industry, whether they were a developer, a designer, an artist, a programmer, a composer, a journalist, a content creator, and I would sort of understand where they came from and how they approached the industry, what they thought, how they did their work, and what they were most proud of. And we would have some really awesome, interesting conversations. And on top of that, because it was a radio program, I would also play the latest in chiptune music from people around the Boston area. So if you don't know what chiptune music is, it is really fun, dancey, energetic music that is heavily inspired by video games. It is usually created with the hardware of old video game consoles, whether that be the Game Boy, the Nintendo Entertainment System, Sega Genesis, different things that kind of give it this retro feel, while also the compositions are created in a very modern style, a way that's sort of easy to get into, but also has that cool classic edge to it. And so there were a lot of people in Boston who were independent chiptune artists, and they wanted a place for people to hear their music, and I was happy to oblige. I brought together a lot of great music, and I wanted to do that again. Listen, when I graduated, I went on to bigger and better things. Of course, I studied at Carnegie Mellon's Entertainment Technology Center. I worked as a localization editor at a number of companies for video games. I have done voiceover for a number of properties, and I'm still doing that today. That's my main focus. I did some journalism for video game websites, including Zelda Informer, The Mary Sue, Breakthrough Radio, a bunch of things. And I feel like now, more than ever, I have the tool set I need to bring these interviews to life, to revive Pixel Pizza and bring it back out of the oven, freshly baked, a new recipe reminiscent of the old one, We're going to have guests like before. We're going to have great composers, music like before, and we're going to be bringing the spirit of radio to the podcast space, which I think is a void that is still not filled. And I'm really excited to be doing that. And keep in mind, this is the very first episode after 7 years. We are flying by the seat of our pants a little bit. The format may change. We may not have preambles this long beforehand. This isn't Mark Maron, this isn't Conan, but it could be a good way to just get a vibe, get a feeling for how the show is going to go. And so today we have the pleasure of speaking with game developer Chris Chung, who I knew when I was in Boston, and it's going to be awesome to reconnect with him. He is the developer of the beloved indie game Catlateral Damage, which recently came out on Nintendo Switch. And as for our music, which we're going to get into right now, we are going to be hearing from the awesome MEMODEMO. And I will let you know which tracks we played after the break. So enjoy.
Oh, today was an unusual day, but after this, there'll be no more distractions.
Look at the
Welcome back, everybody, to Pixel Pizza. You just listened to the song Power Slide by MEMODEMO, and we are here with our very first interview with an old friend of mine, Chris Chung. As I said, he worked on the game Catlateral Damage, and he's now over at Firehose Games. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, thanks for having me.
How you been?
Pretty good. Keeping busy. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like as good as anybody can be during a global pandemic.
Yeah, totally. That may actually be a good place to start. How would you say the pandemic has changed like the way you make games?
Yeah, I feel like it changed a lot, but not a lot at the same time. So I feel like before the pandemic, I was, working in an office with other people and in-person meetings, and when you need someone, like, just go walk over to their desk and ask them a question. And since the pandemic started, everybody's been working from home, which I think you lose a lot of that kind of in-person office culture of game development, but it's still very possible to work. I don't know. I feel like I have this set up at home in my basement office, and I feel like as long as I have internet, I can make games. Internet and a computer, I can make games. And I think for me personally, I think just the remote nature of it, I think has made me a little bit more productive, possibly to a fault, where since my office is at home, I can just work as long as I want, whenever I want. And I know when I was trying to wrap up development on Catlateral Damage Remastered, it was like I feel like it was crunch, but not really crunch. It was self-imposed crunch. I feel like I was working a lot of hours, but it didn't really feel like a lot of hours. It was just kind of like a time. The pandemic has made just like this time suck of work for me.
I can imagine it would be hard to tell the difference between when you're working and when you're not.
Yeah. Which I'm still on the fence of whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, but I definitely am trying to shift to a more healthy work-life balance and try to deal with that since we've shipped that game.
That's great. That's awesome. Going back, rewinding some, when would you say you knew you wanted to make games?
That's a good question. I feel like it was sometime in middle school or high school for me. I started playing games in elementary school. I think I had a friend in third grade who had Super Nintendo, a Sega Genesis, and when I went over his house, like that's all I wanted to do was play games. And then moving into I think it was middle school or early high school, I learned, it was when I was just getting on the internet, and I found out about Game Maker, which is still a viable game development tool these days too. And I started playing around with a bunch of tutorials and stuff, and just kind of immersing myself in that technology. And I think that was kind of when I realized, oh, I can, I've played a lot of games, and I, know a lot about games. And I can maybe actually make games. So I didn't make anything too noteworthy back then. But when I was looking at colleges, I found that Worcester Polytech College, about an hour from where I grew up, had a game development program, and I think that only accelerated the the feeling of knowing I wanted to make games, because it felt like, oh, if there's a university program for it, it has to be a viable career path, and I guess the rest is history from there. I got accepted there, and did 4 years in that program, and then kind of jumped into the industry shortly after.
That's great. Are there any like old projects? Did you when you applied to the school, did you send them any of your games, or?
I don't think so. I must have mentioned it in some of the essays and whatnot, but I know like some of the projects I did, a couple of the early projects I did were basically just tutorials that I like either added stuff to or changed the art or whatever. And I think my first, I guess, kind of custom project was like a platformer that had like every platforming feature built into it. It was just like one giant level, and it was like, oh, you can crouch and you can shoot and you can climb ladders, and it was all this funny stuff. It wasn't actually a game. There wasn't any progression. It was just kind of a tech demo, a bunch of stuff. But yeah, I don't remember in the admissions process if they actually asked about that or anything.
From graduating, when did you start on Catlateral?
So Catlateral, I started it's about 2 or 3 years after I graduated. I was working full time at a company in Cambridge, Mass, and doing QA for them. And I was just kind of doing game jams on the side every now and then. And Catlateral came out of the 7-day FPS game jam in end of 2013. So I worked on it kind of nights and weekends for the I think it was about 7 days for that jam. And at the end, I had a prototype of Catlateral that I put online just as like a browser game. And it kind of took off after that.
Yeah, game jams are the most fun. They're you just throw yourself into it. I've done a few global game jams, and I've made a lot of cool friends that way. Are there any other jam projects you look back fondly on?
Trying to think. I know I've done a couple global game jams, some with people I hadn't met before, and some with friends. And I did Ludum Dare one year just because it was a quick like weekend jam, and I just like whipped together a like super basic like shoot 'em up game that like didn't really have any art, like everything was just squares. And I just called it that. I just was like, that's the aesthetic of the game, so I don't have time to make art for it. But yeah, I feel like a lot of the jam games I've done were just pretty quick, or pretty just kind of stapled together, just because they were like global game jams, like 3 days. I think it's just like a weekend thing. Yeah. Same with Ludum Dare, but yeah, I think one of the reasons that I think Catlateral stuck was just because it was a longer time period to work on it, and I think that definitely helped get something a little more concrete out of the jam.
Yeah, I was surprised when you said that. I haven't heard of a 7-day game jam before, but I can see that gave you more time to put the thought into it.
Yeah, I think yeah, like years ago it was like game jams were supposed to be like super quick, like just a couple days, or some people would do like 24-hour game jams or whatnot. And then I think 7-day FPS, and I think there's a 7-day roguelike jam too that are a bit longer. And then yeah, I think people just realize like, oh, that's a really short amount of time, and people tend not to sleep or take care of themselves, so we should probably run them longer. And I know there's like a bunch on itch.io that basically anybody can start them, and I think those usually go longer. Like you can make them go 2 weeks, 3 weeks, like a month, and it's very much more low key. Like just take your time, make something, submit it. Like no pressure.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember one of the game jams I did was in New York City, and I grew up right outside of the city, maybe it's like a 45-minute train ride. And so every day I would go to the jam site first thing in the morning. I'd be there all day. Then I'd go back home on the train and sleep at home, and then first thing in the morning go back, and it was like I hardly got any sleep. But
yeah, I know there are some
direction.
Yeah, there are some. I think it's MIT usually does a site for the global game jam, or when we were doing game jams in person, and I think they had a strict like go home, sleep, shower, come back rule, because I know some other locations are just like, you can sleep here, just or work all night or whatever, and that's not the greatest way to make a game.
Totally. Maybe it would be best, because Catlateral is such a unique game. In like 2 sentences, could you explain it to the audience?
Yeah, so Catlateral Damage is a first-person destructive house cat simulator and you play as just an ordinary cat, and you run around your owner's house and knock things on the floor, and that's basically it.
So you brought it to Kickstarter, right? Originally?
Yes. Yep.
So what was that process like? Like the whole setting up the Kickstarter and the crowdfunding, and that's a whole domain, you know?
Yeah. So yeah, a couple months after the game jam, I started working with Firehose Games. We partnered together to get the game made and launched. And we did the Kickstarter, I think it was around June and July of 2014. So I think it's about 6 months or so from the game jam version. So Firehose and I worked together to kind of build the campaign, put it together, do the marketing, that sort of stuff. And I think building the campaign took us about a month before we even launched it. Just kind of putting the page together, getting the video made, getting a demo build, a playable demo build for it. Yeah, I think it was basically a full-time job for us to actually run it after we launched it. And a lot of it was, like writing updates and doing outreach and just kind of maintaining it, replying to comments, replying to messages. There were a couple of times where we updated the reward tiers, because I think we had a couple of limited ones that ran out, so we just had to set up new ones. So yeah, there's just a bunch of kind of ongoing work to build the campaign and then to run the campaign, and then a little bit of work after that for like reward fulfillment and stuff. But I do think we got in, I think, kind of on the tail end of kind of the video game boom on Kickstarter. I feel like after that there were not a lot of games were finding a lot of success, or their kind of goals were getting smaller as time went on.
Yeah, I remember that was around the time of like Shovel Knight and Bloodstained and some of those really big ones.
Yeah.
How have you seen the reception over the years?
Yeah, I think I'm still surprised at the reception. That so many people A, saw it, and B, enjoyed it. And I still see comments of people like finding their cats in the game, or recommending it to people on Twitter or Reddit. So yeah, I think it makes me happy that I just kind of whipped up a silly game in my spare time about my childhood cat, and a lot of people kind of gravitated towards that, and related to it on some level. And I know a lot of comments we used to get throughout development where, like at PAX, when people would come by and see it, they'd be like, oh, my cat does that, or they'd play the game and be like, oh, now I understand why cats do this. And just all that kind of positivity around the game was really, really humbling.
I didn't know that. I didn't know it was based on your childhood cat. That's really awesome. That's really personal.
Yeah, he was a very interesting cat, and he always got what he wanted, whether we gave it to him or not. And yeah, he would always, growing up, we would have like no cats on the counters or tables, like if we're cooking or eating or whatever. So of course he would just go up whenever he wanted to, and knock stuff over or steal a pizza or whatever. So there was no stopping him.
I've only ever had dogs, but I've had a couple dogs that were like that. So
yeah,
I can imagine what it must have been like. And I know at one point the game was at SGDQ. That what is that like as a developer seeing your game speedrun?
Yeah, that was a shock to me. So for people that don't know how the game works, is all the levels are procedurally generated, and there are different themes of for levels. So there's like a standard house, and then there's kind of like a modern house, a log cabin, a mansion, and then there are some bonus levels. And the way the game works is you play through the 4 kind of normal levels in order, and the actual levels are procedurally generated. And at any time you can kind of find a bonus key to go to the special levels. So beating the game is really just playing through 4 levels and getting a high score at the end. And then you can replay as much as you want to get higher scores or see new levels or topple new objects. So yeah, the GDQ run was basically how getting through 4 levels as fast as possible. And completing a level is knocking over just some number of items, which is also procedurally generated. So there's a lot of RNG in the game. But it's a pretty quick speed run. I think they did it in like 13 minutes total. And yeah, it was funny because it was one of the it was a small run, so it was kind of slotted in at one of the early morning slots. So I think I woke up at like 4 a.m. to watch it live, just because that's when it was running. But yeah, it was really funny to see someone play really fast and at a high level, because it's when you think of speedrun games, it's not one that I would think comes to mind.
Right.
But yeah, no, it was great.
Correct me if I am wrong, but with some of your games, you do like the art, design, and programming, right?
I do a little of that. Yeah, most of it recently has been design and programming focused. For the original Catlateral, I made a lot of the kind of basic models for the levels and like the objects you could knock over. And with working with Firehose, they helped get me in touch with a 3D artist to help model variations and new objects, and like the cat models and that sort of thing. But a lot of the like 2D UI stuff was stuff that I made, and a lot of the art was kind of variations on things that I either made for the prototype or shortly after. So yeah, I tend to kind of touch all aspects of the game, but yeah, definitely more design and programming focused now.
Awesome. And like, what would you say is something about your design process that like nobody knows?
Yeah, I think the way I tend to look at games, or at least designing games when I'm kind of starting out on an idea, is trying to latch on to a fun and interesting experience that I haven't seen before. And that's how Catlateral started. Was I, had always grown up with cats, and had this theme for this game jam be an interesting first person game. I was kind of thinking like, what games haven't I seen that would be interesting, and a first person cat game was one where I hadn't seen it before, and as far as I could tell, it didn't exist, or at least not in a professional or like a released capacity. So just kind of thinking like, what is something that a player would want to do in a game that they haven't done before, or what's a place or an environment that a player would want to play in that they haven't or they can't experience in real life. And that's just kind of taking that perspective is kind of how I start thinking of new game ideas. And yeah, I think there's a lot of different angles that people come from. I know a lot of bigger companies are, what makes the most money, or what can we do with this or that, or what's popular right now. So yeah, I feel like I don't know if my approach is the best way, but I try to think first and foremost like what is the player going to experience at a high level, and try to design from there.
Totally, yeah. I think there are so many times I've played a game where it's brought an idea to the table and it was something that I said to myself, I never knew that this was something I wanted. Like I was just playing. Have you played Donut County?
Yes. Yeah.
I just played that yesterday, and like that idea of like just having the hole on the ground and it gets bigger and bigger is something I never would have even dreamed would have been like a game idea, but they made it so cool and fun.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's stuff like that. I kind of think there are definitely games that I've played where, while I'm playing them, I think, this could have probably been a movie or this could have been, some other medium. So yeah, definitely thinking, yeah, like Catlateral, like Donut County, like what is a thing that's only possible in a game that players haven't seen before? And I think that's at least what gets me excited about games.
What was it like bringing back Catlateral for the Meowster?
It was exciting because I think so the original Catlateral came out in 2015, the kind of 1.0 release. And development on Meowster started in kind of end of 2018. So there was about a 3-year period where I had done some follow-up development on the original game, but there was a lot of time where I was thinking about kind of all the things that I wish I had done, or things that I had changed, or things that could have been better, or like a lot of feedback people have given that I wasn't able to act on. And I think just having that opportunity to take kind of the core concept and just build it out a slightly different way with some new stuff and some changes and adjustments, I think was a really great opportunity. And also being able to deliver the game on basically all platforms was also kind of a nice way to make the game a bit more accessible, since the original game was only on PC and PlayStation 4. So I think just kind of making I've been calling it kind of like a definitive version of the game. I think there was always some nagging feelings of things that I wish I had done better, or things that we could have done or wanted to do. And I feel like with Meowster, that's kind of like the definitive package in my opinion.
Yeah, it must have been satisfying to sort of have it complete in your eyes out
Mm-hmm.
on the table. Were there any challenges in getting it and making it work on all the other platforms, or was it fairly easy?
So yeah, there were a handful of challenges. So I think the big one was that Remastered was completely rebuilt from the ground up. There are some carryover like art assets and sounds and stuff, but basically all the code was kind of revamped in a newer version of the engine. So both games were written in Unity. The first game was written in Unity's version of JavaScript, what they call it Unity script, it's my code skills were not great, so the code base was a complete mess, and basically impossible to update or add new stuff to. So with Remastered, alongside the newer version of Unity, shifted to using C# instead, which meant kind of porting over some of the old logic and rewriting basically everything else. So I think the only code that I think carried over was like the movement code. I think everything else was reorganized and totally refactored. So that was a challenge of just kind of rebuilding the game again. But it wasn't too bad, just because it was a known game, and I knew how it was going to look, how it was going to feel, generally speaking, and how things were going to work. I think in terms of the different platforms, I think Unity made it fairly easy to at least get the game up and running on everything. but each platform has their own features and plugins you have to use. Like specifically on Xbox, there's a lot of user management code that doesn't exist on other platforms. So you basically have to manage who's logging in and logging out and making sure everyone's accounts are using the correct save data and that sort of thing. Whereas like on Nintendo Switch or PlayStation, you can really only be logged into like one user. So that's kind of taken care of. But then there's just the different platforms have different features too. So like the Switch has a touchscreen and none of the other ones do. So making sure we supported that for menus was a little bit of some work. And then like both the PlayStation 5 and the Switch have a new vibration mode in the controllers, like a more advanced vibration system. So kind of supporting that took a little bit of work too. And then I think just the, I guess, non-development stuff of getting builds uploaded to the different websites and getting them through cert and catching bugs and all that stuff that happens after you make a build was a bit of a challenge too, just because we were supporting basically everything. So I think it was six platforms total. So PC, Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series. Yeah, and those are all separate builds with slight differences in them. So and doing that all as basically one developer is I kind of took it as a fun challenge to see if I could do it, and I did. So
yeah. You're like on the ground floor practically for PS5 and Xbox Series.
Yeah, I think I got my PlayStation 5 dev kit like a week before it came out. So I would have loved to be a launch title, but I think a couple months after, or actually it was almost a year. Yeah, almost a year after. It's not too bad.
All right, so we are gonna take a short musical break. Stay right here, Chris. welcome back to Pixel Pizza. You just listened to Afterglow by MEMODEMO, and we are back here with Chris talking about Catlateral Damage and other stuff. So, Chris, I remember that I think it was at some Boston game convention that we met. It may have been one of the smaller dev meetups, but I mean, we saw each other a bunch at PAXs and different things, and that was so awesome. But I know right now, of course, there really isn't much in the way of conventions. And so how has that affected the way that you're marketing your games?
Yeah, it's definitely put a bit of a damper on stuff. Like, yeah, there isn't really a good way to get feedback on stuff easily, as it used to be when we would just bring a build to a meetup and have a bunch of people play it, or bring it to PAX and have a lot of fresh eyes on it and get excited about it. So yeah, I think that's kind of the big change. And even just on the developer side, like going to meetups to just talk to people and see what other people are working on is harder too. So yeah, just trying to keep a pulse on things through, like, there's a Boston Slack community where people post what they're working on and have different conversations there. Trying to talk more about the game on social media, just to get it out there. But yeah, I was joking because I went to PAX East in 2020, right before everything happened. Yeah, and I was joking throughout 2020 that we went to the only game conference, the greatest game conference in 2020, just because everything else got canceled. But yeah, I'm not sure. I bought a ticket for PAX East this year. I'm not sure if I'll go. We'll see. It'd be nice to go back and just kind of see people and just be immersed in that again. But yeah, definitely trying to keep as safe as possible as a priority.
Yeah, when all that stuff, when everything is safe, I miss Boston so much. I miss all the cool people I met there. I really hope to go to a PAX or something. So you mentioned that you've been working with Firehose since like 2013, and you're still there now. So how would you say like the company has evolved in that time? Because that's a while to be with a company.
Yeah. So when I started working with them, they were starting up like an indie accelerator program. And Catlateral was kind of like the first game to run through that program. And so at that point we were just kind of partnering on the game, and basically like I wasn't working full time for them. I was just kind of working with them. But they were nice enough to kind of open up their office space to me so that I could work in person with them and basically have a desk to work on the game. So I did that for about 2 years, I think. It was it was sometime in 2016 when I was kind of rolling off of Catlateral. Firehose was looking for new projects to kick up, and I ended up working on a VR game with a couple developers there. It was a very short, like 2 to 3 month project. We were just kind of trying to see if we could get something out quickly, and we did. We launched King Kaiju. I think it was early 2017 on Steam, and that was a kind of a fun, just quick, let's try something new project. And then after that, Firehose got a big contract project that needed a bunch of people, and at that point I didn't have anything else lined up, so they hired me full time to be the project manager for that contract. and then we ended up doing a second contract that was similar to that I also worked as a project manager on. And then we did a bunch of prototyping, and some other small contract work here and there. And now we're working on a pretty big unannounced project. And yeah, my role's kind of shifted to be a bunch of different things. I think my title has always kind of been project manager, but I've recently shifted to my title to be just game developer, because I do like a little of everything there. So yeah, and the company's definitely, I think when I started working with them, the company was fairly small. I forget how big I think it was around 10 or fewer. And now we're a little bit bigger than that. So yeah, I think the company definitely has grown a bit, and we've worked on a bunch of stuff together. And yeah, it's been a fun ride.
That's exciting. What was it like taking on the role of project manager? Because I know that's like an entirely different skill set.
Yeah, I think that came about because during Catlateral development, I was very much, in addition to doing programming and design and a lot of other stuff, I was definitely kind of wearing the project manager hat and always thinking, we have to get this game out as soon as possible, and let's not waste time on things that will take a bunch of time and effort to build, and people won't notice. Or I was trying to kind of develop as lean as possible, knowing kind of what we had for resources and budget and that sort of thing. So when the contract project came up, Eitan, the studio lead, was like, you were very good at managing yourself on Catlateral. Do you want to manage this project? Like, there's a lot of overlap in terms of responsibilities. And I think it ended up working out pretty well, because the team was, the team that I was managing was fairly small. I think like six to eight people. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of learning on the job, and learning to kind of get everybody on board, and divvying up tasks, and just making sure that the development was going smoothly, and also communicating with the client a lot to kind of be the liaison of like telling the development team what the client wants, giving the client updates from the development team. And it was a lot of emails. Oh. I remember. So yeah, there was a good chunk of time where I wasn't actually doing any active development. It was mostly just kind of making sure the project went smoothly, and everybody had what they needed.
Yeah, I did project management on a couple of grad school projects. We did a VR adaptation of Frankenstein, and we were doing it for the local library to show at their exhibition for the bicentennial anniversary of the novel. And so we had this guy who was the head of the library as our client. And so for me, it was just this huge crash course in sending emails and making sure what the client wanted was something we were able to do with the technology, because they didn't really know the whole technology, and making sure everyone in the team was on the same page and hitting the deadlines, and was so much learning on the fly.
Yeah. The biggest thing for me was that for learning was like, yeah, the client not knowing the technology or even like how games get made, or just them not knowing a lot of that stuff, and having to kind of explain to them why certain things weren't possible, or why things are taking as long as they're taking, or just kind of communicating those two different, like it's basically being a translator between exactly. the development and the client, which is a lot of work, but definitely a useful skill set to have.
I guess another question I had was, we've talked about where you've been What would you say your hopes are for this coming year, for your career, for the industry?
Yeah, I'm kind of at an interesting point, kind of having shipped remastered last year, where I am actively asking myself that stuff right now. And I think having recently shipped a game, I kind of forgot what it was like to do that and how exciting that is to kind of put something out into the world. So I'm hoping that this year I can kind of help put some more games out, or at least have some have be a part of a shipping game, or at least like announcing an interesting game. And yeah, I mean, again, I think it would be nice to see some more developers in person again. I feel like last year it seemed like things were going to get better, and then things got worse, and now things maybe are getting better. So I have no idea when when in-person events will return, but yeah, it would be nice to kind of go to a meetup and see what other people are working on again. But yeah, I think just kind of staying connected with people, and trying to get better at keeping up with people, I think is kind of a big thing that I want to do this year.
Yeah, that's been a big thing for me, and I think maybe that's part of why I wanted to bring back this podcast, was finding cool people like you who I connected with a long time ago but haven't gotten to speak to since. And yeah, being able to reconnect, I think,
Yeah.
important. And I just remembered, I remembered the other time we saw each other was when we were waiting in line for the amiibos at Target.
Oh yeah.
That was a very specific point in time where everybody was after the Super Smash Brothers amiibos, and I was going all the time to waiting out in the cold with my friends at the different chains, because sometimes they would have them at Best Buy, sometimes they would have them at Target.
Yeah, that was definitely a wild time,
Oh,
where we're just hopping to different stores and hoping that the stores got more than 3 of them or whatever. And yeah, I feel like the past couple of years they've been better at stocking them, or maybe the demand has died down a lot, but I feel like it's a little bit easier to get them now, or at least order them online,
oh
which
yeah.
is nice. So
Order them online. Do you have any funny other stories from that era?
I'm trying to remember. I definitely remember waiting outside in the cold at like Toys R Us, because Toys R Us was still around.
Right.
I think that was for the Lucario amiibo. And yeah, I just remember there being like 10 people in line, and there was always that person that like had slept there overnight or whatever. And then everybody else was there at like 6 a.m. or whatever. And then, they'd open the doors, or they'd have people. I remember they would like hand out flyers with numbers on. Maybe that was Best Buy. I think Best Buy did that. They would like put a number on your
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
a thing and hand it out to like be like, you have like, stay in line, and if you don't get a paper, you're not getting one. But before that, it was just a free-for-all, where like they would open the doors and people would just run in, and like you had to like have memorized the layout of the store to know how to get there the fastest. And then either they'd be on the shelves, or they'd have them in a separate area, or what. And yeah, it was it was something else. I definitely have not done that since then.
Are there any games you're playing right now that are like inspiring you, would you say? Or recently?
I don't know. I feel like a lot of the games I've been playing the past couple of years, and maybe it's influenced by the pandemic, but I feel like a lot of games that I've been playing are like my comfort games. Like I feel like I haven't been playing a lot of like brand new stuff. I've been playing a lot of the Picross games on Switch, which I had played a lot of them on the 3DS before that, and the DS before that. So I always just find my way back there because it's a nice like shut off your brain type game and just like fill in the squares. It's kind of a relaxing thing. And then I'm at the end of the Diamond and Pearl, the Pokemon game remakes, which again is a game that I've played through already in the past, but I'm revisiting with the updated version. So yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any like brand new games. I'm like really bad at starting games because I feel like it's like a big commitment of like, oh no, I gotta learn a new like control scheme or learn a new story or whatever, which is why I kind of fall back to old stuff. But I'm trying to think what I feel like there was a game that I was playing recently, but I can't remember what it was.
So another question I always have to ask on this show. I asked it in the before days when this was a radio program, and I'm asking it now. Where is your favorite place to get pizza?
I feel like this is a bad answer, but lately me and my wife have been on a Domino's kick, which I think some people would argue isn't real pizza. But I feel like it fulfills the same I don't know, pizza cravings that we have. I'm trying to think before that, where we would go that was like not a chain place. There's a place that is near where the Firehose offices used to be in Cambridge, called All Star Pizza Bar. And I think I would get lunch there like once a week or once every 2 weeks. And they're interesting in that they have a lot of kind of quirky pizza topping combinations, but they also like you can also just go up and order a slice. But their slices are a quarter of a pizza, like a double slice. So you get like a huge portion, but they do for their slices, they do like cheese, pepperoni, a veggie pizza, and then one called the Funky, which is just like a random mix of ingredients that I assume they have left over or something. So you'll get like sausage and red peppers and like ricotta cheese or something, and that's just for that day. And
so you don't know what you're gonna get if you order the Funky. It's just different every time.
Yeah, you don't know until you like walk up to the restaurant. Like I think you can probably call ahead, but yeah, they have a chalkboard inside that they update every day with the Funky and the veggie flavors. So that was always a fun kind of game of like, oh, I wonder what random pizza flavor they're gonna have today. And if it's something totally weird, I'll just get a pepperoni or something. But yeah, that was an office favorite when we were in the office.
I wonder if like big slices of pizza like that is just a Boston thing, because when I was going to school at Emerson, right by Boylston, I don't know if you ever went to it, but there's a place called New York Pizza. And
no, I don't think I've been there.
yeah, they gave you these pretty cheap slices that were enormous, and everybody at the school would go there. And it was like you could get like buffalo chicken, you could get different veggies, meat lovers, all these, but the slices were just enormous. It's like, I couldn't believe it. That was all questions I had in mind. Chris, was there anything else you wanted to add?
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. A lot of the work I'm doing now is unannounced or confidential. So I'm not sure when I'll be able to talk about that stuff. So yeah, Catlateral was the last kind of public thing I've been working on. So yeah.
Then where can people follow you to keep up with any updates on future projects?
So you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Crixeleon, ChrixEleon. You can also follow the Catlateral Damage pages. If you just go to catlateraldamage.com, there's all the links there. I don't tweet super often, unless it's typically an announcement or something big that I want to share. But that's where I would do it if I was going to be announcing stuff.
Yes, I'll make sure to link those in the description, so anyone who's like listening to this in the car or whatever and just can't remember the URLs can dig them up when they read it. And
Cool.
Also, I will do the same for our musical artist of the week. So go support them, MEMODEMO. And thank you so much for taking the time to join me today, Chris. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. This is fun.
Yeah, it was great catching up with you.
Mhm.
So this concludes the first episode of the Pixel Pizza reboot. Thank you for tuning in and listening. And we will see you next week. So to end us off, here is a final track by MEMODEMO called Mean Mug.
I like that idea.
Tell me if it's distorting, because I'm loud as shit. Still kind of loud, but it's straight.
I can tell there were selfish and greedy deadlines in the show. We've had enough of this nonsense.
Unfortunately, Mrs. Reeves, the job has just been filled. impressed by the loveliness of her hair. She's got a lot of talent there.
The beat kicks, then I start rocking.
Don't understand what's going on here.
3, 2, 1, kick it.